Welcome to Use Your Words podcast. Wow, that's an interesting background song. That's all I'll say. But anyways, we're talking about something that's been, I don't know, I wouldn't say ablaze on Twitter, but it's been ablaze on Christian Twitter, so to speak. And that is recently Kevin Max, him coming out saying he's deconstructing his faith, believing in the universal Jesus, and is an ex-evangelical. So what do all those terms mean? On this extended edition of Aaron Defining Words, we will find out.
Of it. Oh! But yeah, it really hurt.
Oh, Mr. Johnson and the sneeze. Going and proving once again that you can be insightful, defining words, and still be Donald Duck all at the same time. But welcome to another episode of Use Your Words podcast. This wonderful week of June before we dive into the holiday weekend of July 4th and that. Well, actually, it's the week before that week. Never mind. Excuse that. This is the pre-week to the week before July 4th. So this is the time when you're out buying all your fireworks and getting them ready, sorting them, and then hope that a fire doesn't go off inside your house and lighting all the fireworks off at once. That's the state of the month we're in right now.
That would be a rough day. Be careful if you got kids, because they're going to think that's a great idea.
If you ever have kids, I hope they find the stuff and go, ooh, I wonder what happens if I light it off inside the closet.
I remember being outside and lighting a box on fire with a sprinkler and sprinklers, whatever. And then, or not sprinklers, sparklers. What am I talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sparklers. And then, well, I didn't stop the box from blazing. And then it started getting, the fire was starting to reach towards the garage, and that would have been a bad day.
Uh-huh.
My dad was not too happy.
Well, your dad wasn't too happy with you then, and Christians aren't too happy with Kevin Max now, so...
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So, Kevin Max, for those of you who are unaware, he was one of the three singers on that old school famous band DC Talk.
Yeah.
You know, when I say old school famous band, I mean that was 90s.
Oh, man.
So, just a little bit ago, I think Aaron probably would have been, 2 or 3. They formed in... Oh, wait. Oh, I did not know they formed that far back.
Oh?
They formed back in 87.
Oh, wow.
Their first CD was 89. So that means I would have been 6 at the time. Yeah, because a new thing came out in 1992. Free at Last was 92, 94. Free at Last, the movie, which was, a recording of their tour. And then their CD that they're most known for, Jesus Freak. They're most known for that CD and song. That was 95.
Yeah.
Supernatural was 98. And then they've been on hiatus ever since there.
Yeah.
I think they did a cruise or 2.
Okay.
In 2019 or something like that. And they were supposed to do a land tour in 2020, but then, COVID.
COVID hit.
COVID kind of
stopped that.
Through
wrench in the...
about everything. But what?
I'm going to look up the lyrics for the Jesus Freak song.
Oh, okay. So, they did all that. They've been they've all kind of gone their own way. Kevin Max specifically, he went to front Audio Adrenaline, another old Christian rock group, I guess you could say. I think that was probably that was the first CD I ever bought was Audio Adrenaline Bloom. So that was a good old thing. So when their singer left, Kevin Max came in. This was after, obviously, DC Talk had kind of broken up, and they started doing things, and they broke up again. I don't think he lasted very long as their lead singer before everyone was just like, yeah, no, we're done. We're not going to entertain this Kevin Max guy. But anyways, so he's still always been around in the Christian music circle, community kind of thing, just because he's kind of legacy at this point with everything. And then a couple weeks ago, as of recording, so it'll probably be closer to a month now by the time this comes out. He just posted on Twitter one day, and he goes, "My name is Kevin Max, and I'm an ex-evangelical." And then he goes on and says how he's talking about how he's deconstructing his faith, and he believes in the universal Jesus, and that is his kind of where he's at in his quote-unquote faith journey at this time. Now, again, we've kind of talked about this month in particular. Two episodes ago, we were like, hey, people go, don't judge, da-da-da. Oh, wait, unless they profess to be a brother or sister in Christ. And he's saying he's a brother or sister of the universal Christ, so I'm not sure if this counts anymore. But yeah, we'll go there still. That's fine. And I will say, when he came out, it's so weird especially because it's Pride Month, it's June month, Pride parades and everything going on. So when I say he came out, everyone's immediately their first reaction, and even your first reaction, Aaron, was, he came out as gay?
Yeah.
You're like, what? I was like, no. He came out as ex-evangelical, as he puts it now. And as deconstructing his faith and all that. So I have a question for you.
And I might have a question for you.
What does it mean to be ex-evangelical?
Used to be evangelical, but now you're not.
Does it mean anything else, though?
I don't know. Wait. I guess it would just tell me that he doesn't want anything to do with it.
So, but when you say you don't want to do it with evangelical, what is evangelical? Why?
I don't know. Because is just a Christian that would evangelize. Well, he'd go out and evangelize about the gospel and stuff. The gospel.
Well, that's to evangelize, yes.
Yeah. I thought that was just tied in with evangelical. I don't know. Maybe not then?
So, yeah. This is where it kind of gets in, I guess you can kind of say, gets you a little in trouble with culture, knowing how culture defines things.
Yeah.
And so this is where your little sheltered boy life comes into play a little bit, okay? Because when we think of evangelical, right, you think of evangelize, you think of a church relating to that is in agreement with the gospels of the church, right?
Yeah.
Merriam-Webster also says that could be a Protestant, but how the culture at large thinks of it is it thinks of it as the fundamentalist church. So not so much like your don't think so much like your New York churches where they're performing gay weddings, and that's not really the evangelical churches. Think more like your Southern Baptist or your Baptist churches where it's like
a lot more strict.
Not so much strict, but like more adherence to what the Bible says. Where they put in their doctrine statements saying, hey, we love all people, we welcome all people here, but we're not going to perform gay weddings. That would be a evangelical, and how it's toxic. And I'm putting all these words in quotes here. Okay. So that is what, when they say that, that's what they mean.
Okay.
They're not talking about, we don't want to be part of sin affirming churches of wherever. It's, we don't want to be part of the churches that, how dare you dyed your hair purple? Because there are certain churches that are like that. They're very strict about things they don't need to be strict about. And in this culture, in today's culture, and I don't know how this happened, but everything happens like this in today's culture. In today's culture, if you say an evangelical church, they go, oh, a white church, I see. It's just the way it goes. It's automatically assumed that's the type of church we're talking, and that may or may not be true. It depends on what part of the country you're in and all that, and people just automatically talk. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be. So it normally, like I said, it's going to be like a Protestant or something like that type of church, but usually on that more conservative end of things. Okay, so when they say an ex-evangelical, it's a person who used to belong to one of these more quote unquote conservative churches.
Okay.
As they put it here, my church's stringent theology and narrow approaches to politics. This is an article from religionandpolitics.org. It is not rated by NewsGuard, by the way, so take it with
Grain of salt.
grains of salt. And I wouldn't give this one too much of a, how to put it, grains of salt anyways, because it is an opinion piece. It's not like a complete straight up article like, boom, this is hard hitting facts. This is, someone writing why they left the evangelical church movement. And it's someone who used to be like a youth minister in one of these evangelical churches, just like Kevin Max used to be this quote unquote famous, if you want to say it, singer from one of the mega groups of the 90s, kind of the defined Christian rock music, as you could say. As much as you may or may not like that he did that. He did.
I think the first song I ever heard by them was the Jesus Freak song.
Yeah.
And I always liked the line, I saw a man with a tat on his big fat belly. It wiggled around like marmalade jelly. That was always my favorite line to sing in that song.
Now, don't forget, DC Talk, in and of itself, that group formed as a rap group. And, they transformed over time into more of the rocky stuff.
Was Toby Mac in it from the beginning?
Yeah.
Really?
They were three friends at college that decided to make a music group.
Because I know Michael Tate, because I remember listening to a Third Day album and he had featured Michael Tate on a song with him. I was like, whoa. I've never known Kevin Max.
Yeah, he tried doing a solo career for a while. It didn't
go too well.
It did not go too well at all.
That sucks.
Not to say Kevin Max doesn't have a great voice. He does. He has a great voice. It's just, this is going to sound...
Say it.
This is going to sound weird.
Say what you need to say.
His music sounds too artsy-fartsy.
Too artsy. See, I never listened to it, so now I have to listen to it.
Go ahead and listen to it. Like Kevin Tate, very smooth vocal.
Tate. Michael Tate?
Michael Tate, yes.
Yeah. See, I already mixed you up, so
yeah.
It's my bad.
Michael Tate, very smooth, nice vocals. He has very good vocals when he sings. Toby Mac, well, he I don't know why he does what he does, but he does, and it works out well for him with his like rap type music. It's not fully rap, but it's rap type. But it works out. His hip hop music, it works out well.
Yeah.
But Kevin Max,
he looks scary.
It never really worked out well. I never liked his stuff, and that's why his solo career never took off. And he went and joined up with Adrenaline. Now, to be fair, Tate joined up with Newsboys from his solo career, and he released a couple albums under his solo career, worked out decently for him, but then he joined up with Newsboys, and they've actually been successful since he joined up with them.
Oh yeah.
Audio Adrenaline just kind of died.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I prefer the older stuff if there's anything.
I looked up Kevin Mack, and this is like one of the first photos that came up. No, you kind of scared me.
Oh, I know exactly.
Like a scary guy.
I know which photo you're.
What is it?
It's probably his Twitter profile photo.
That was one of them.
Yeah. So that Kevin Max, he tried, and I'll give him credit. It's not the easiest to be a solo artist, so to speak, especially when for DC Talk, he was not so much the hip hop rap type person that Toby Mac and all that the other guy was. He was just kind of smooth vocals, and he has very smooth vocals. Mm-hmm. I'm not dissing him on his vocal ability at all. In fact, to be fair, he does have a new album coming out that he kickstarted with a group called Sad Astronauts. Huh. So the group is called Sad Astronauts, and the album is called Adult Fears. So I guess we'll see how well that goes along. Yeah. And I just find the timing of it. Part of me wants to be he's being genuine, but the other part of me is like, oh, is he looking for publicity for his new album that's coming out?
Right.
Because just the timing of it all going, oh, I'm ex-evangelical, I'm this, that, and I read that, and then I go and I look at and again, social media is a cancer, but sometimes that's how you have to interact with people. I look at his social media, his Twitter profile, and I go, oh, yeah, yes. I see how this goes. He's actually changed it since I last saw it, actually, because it used to say anti-narrow mind, pro, like, I'd have to go back and find.
Open mind.
Yeah, it's like pro-open-mindedness or something like that. Now it says poet, singer, rebel, hubs, dad, leftist, gothic, liberal, hippie, Zen motorcyclist.
Zen motor... What's a Zen motorcyclist?
I don't know. You would have to ask him.
I don't know what a Zen motorcyclist is.
That's what I said. You'd have to ask him.
What the heck?
So he actually changed his profile actually quite a bit since I last saw him. His profile. He must have gotten some pushback from it because if you watch John Cooper Stuff podcast, he actually covered this as well at one point, and he was making fun of Kevin Max's profile. He's like, you read it, and it's the Wikipedia.
And the Wikipedia.
Because it was like, it's like pro-love, anti-small mind, anti-bigot, pro this. And I'm just like...
getting woke over here.
But regardless of Wikipedia or not, that's not the point. The point is exvangelical, okay? Which, if you didn't know, there's actually an exvangelical podcast, just FYI. So the exvangelical podcast is essentially people who were of the Christian faith and now are not. And so the person who started, he said, I want to primarily understand why so many of my friends and colleagues from Christian colleges were no longer evangelical. What were the reason for us leaving? I want to explore that in depth. And the best way to do that seemed to be by having long-form conversations. So I'm sure it's out there. I tried to pull up the website for it, exvangelicalpodcast.com, but either I'm having internet issues or they're having DNS issues or stuff like that. So you can try that out probably at about a later time. Considering how that this is only from 2019, I doubt the podcast has gone away, but you never know. But what was funny is listening to John Cooper. Because he recently wrote a book. I know you have a copy of it. Have you read it?
Nope.
So he actually, in one of the interviews I was listening to, he was actually going to use the term exvangelical in the book.
Yeah.
But people who proofread it were like, what does that mean? We don't know what it means. Because it really wasn't used that often at that time, right? Okay. When he was writing it. Now, it's actually at times has been trending on Twitter.
Of course.
So there's a lot of people coming out saying, you know what? No, I've left the church. I've done this, done that. And that's fine. I don't care if church, that's up to you. Would I say I'm going to recommend it? No. I'm going to recommend that you don't do that, but hey, I'm not going to be able to stop you. That's a whole thing on, well, hey, we talked about that. Judgment.
Dang it.
So Cooper, like I said, was going to use that exvangelical, and if you look as for that Twitter hashtag
exvangelical,
exvangelical, they also pair it typically with empty the pews. So see, okay. So, but that's on Twitter, it's a hashtag, people leaving the church and that. Again, that being said, as part of it, the exvangelical thing, a lot of this starts coming with the whole deconstruction thing. So do you know what that is?
So that's what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
What is this whole deconstruction stuff?
Yep. So Kevin Max has said that he's also deconstructing his faith, like I said, believing in the universal. So deconstructing, this one, it's not just, how do I put this? It's not just a religious, it's not just, that. It's where you deconstruct things. So let me give you some definitions here. Deconstructionism is a theory of textual criticism or interpretation. So how you interpret text and how you interpret what you're reading and all that, right? That denies there is any single correct meaning or interpretation of a passage or text. In other words, everything is irrelevant. It lines up closely with this whole postmodern theology and postmodern society that we have. The postmodernism, what does that say? Postmodernism says that there's no single truth, that every truth is your own truth. Every truth is relative. Everything is relative to each other.
Yeah. Okay. The first time you said that, it made me think of that band, The Modern Post, but that's hopefully different.
I am not familiar with The Modern Post.
Really? Oh, we did one of their songs for youth group, the Rejoice song.
Oh, is that them? Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't realize that was them.
Which is funny, because he's also the vocalist for Thrice, but apparently he is also one. I thought I was talking to a friend, and he was saying that he seems to be one of those things where it's kind of the same boat as this Kevin guy.
Which is?
With the whole more of the universal Jesus thing and
Okay.
just love is love and all this other stuff.
Okay.
So okay.
So yeah, postmodernism. That's. I remember learning about this in college. Where everything is relative to each other.
Yeah.
You have your truth. I have my truth. There's no central truth.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to continue reading this article here.
Yeah.
At the heart of the deconstructionalist theory of interpretation are two primary ideas. First is the idea that no passage or text can possibly convey a single, reliable, consistent, and coherent message to everyone who reads or hears it. The second is that the author who wrote the text is less responsible for the piece's content than are the impersonal forces of culture such as language and the author's unconscious ideology. Therefore, the basic tenets of deconstructionalism are contrary to the clear teachings of the Bible that absolute truth does exist and we can indeed know it. So in other words, what deconstructionalism is saying is that we can't know the full truth about anything because we don't know the full culture. We don't know the hidden bias of the person who wrote that text when they wrote it. So therefore, there's parts of the text that we can't know, but we can read it and we can pull our truth out of it, and we can pull what the truth is that is relevant to us out of it that makes us feel good. Essentially, what we're coming down to is, and I hate to say it, we're coming down to the infantilization of the church, where that passage that I know it, I all happy. That's what it's coming down to. We pick and choose our pieces to make us feel happy. It just like the judge thing, where we pick a little piece and we don't pick the whole context. Because if we pick the whole context, then we go, oh, it's actually talking about don't be a hypocrite. It's not saying don't judge, ever. It's saying before you judge, make sure that thing isn't something that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
And, oh, hey, yeah, if we read the whole thing about judge, we read the whole New Testament, we're supposed to judge others in the church who call themselves brothers. But outside the church, we let God judge them, and they're not going to like it at some point.
Nope.
But we don't judge them because they're not a part of the church body.
Yep.
But, no, it's nicer to go, let me read, do not judge, because it can't say anything to me.
So what do they say about the verse where it talks about, where Christ is saying that he is the only way to the Father?
They may not accept that as the absolute truth, because how do we know, in their argument, that whatever's written
wasn't actually,
that there's not some like hidden context behind it that we're not aware of. So the big thing from them is that postmodernism says there's no absolute truth, which feeds into that deconstructionalism, which then feeds into people who go, well, if there's no absolute truth, then why should I trust this Bible? And if I don't trust this Bible, why should I trust God? And if I don't trust God, and that's and I'll admit, that is a very simplistic way to put it, because deconstructionalism is everyone who says, no, I'm going to, and some people go, well, I'm questioning everything about my faith. Beautiful.
Right.
Question. I'm not saying don't question.
We should blindly.
No, do not go along blindly either.
No, I'm not.
We should be questioning things. We should put things to the test. Just going along
willy-nilly is not good.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that's a little crazy is they will go along and say they are better than other people because they deconstructed, so to speak. They have seen the light, their own version of the light.
It's not a good light, I'll tell you that.
And I get it why people want to maybe quote unquote deconstruct, because they're unhappy with some of the things in the church. And I'm not going to be the first. I'm not going to be the one to blindly say, oh, the church has done everything perfectly. No, the church has done some things bad.
Because what is the church made of?
Made of people.
Exactly.
Imperfect people. And that, I get that. We as a church do have some things to learn from and become better.
To correct, yeah.
And I get it. You're like, oh, I'm disillusioned. Well, some of the people will go like, they're disillusioned with the church and all that, and I get it. But that's not a reason to go bye to everything.
Right. Yeah.
It's
not. Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the times, what you see when you have this, and Kevin Max is probably one of the more of the exceptions because he's a little bit older, but a lot of the ones are a little bit younger. They're moving from their teenage years to adulthood. They're finding now for the first time what it's like to actually own up to their own faith.
Right.
You know, that it's not just lollipops and rainbows and unicorns and babies' tears and
Yeah.
you know, it's not just that. It's not just the pleasant things, you know.
No.
It's not just unicorn farts and it's unfortunately full of, you know, hippie BO and, you know, someone who's fallen from grace because they look at porn or they got drunk.
Yeah.
It's full of people who make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's full of people that are imperfect. And they go and they look and they go, well, it's just a bunch of hypocrites. Welcome to the club.
So everyone fits in.
Yeah, as I said, welcome to the club, okay? Welcome to the club. And there is a good way to deconstruct. So when I say deconstructionism, it's not always all bad. It is good to take a look at some of the things. You know, do you, like, for example, if you went to a church that was like, you know, come here and the only way you're going to be wealthy in life is if you dedicate your life to follow exactly what the pastor says and you don't deviate from them and you meet with us 20 times a week and, you know, it almost cult-like.
That's culty.
Yeah. You start going down to deconstruct of that is like, that's a good thing. It start questioning those things.
Yeah.
You're like, what does the Bible actually say? Because when you start breaking from tradition, you start reading, going back to the Bible and saying, what does the Bible say? Deconstructing your faith that way, then you're like, these two don't line up. Okay, maybe this church is toxic. And there's other things. There's other things in there. I'm not just talking like, you know, those sort of things. You know, you'll have people who make fun of, you know, oh, it says if I must be a good wife, then I have to do this, and this, you know, those sort of things. Some of those things may be toxic too. You know, depending, again, deep church. I'm not going to generalize every church. You know, if there's a church out there that says, if you're a woman, you may only wear skirts and you may not talk. That's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's toxic. Deconstruct that. Get out there. And it's not even to deconstruct that. It's
just leave.
Realize that church is wrong and get out of there.
Just leave.
Okay. But to quote unquote deconstruct and go, well, we can't know what the truth is of the scripture because we don't know what they really meant because it was in our language and it was written by white and it was written so long ago that we don't know their culture and how does it apply to this cult. That's when you start going off a little on the deep end, and that's when you start going, I don't know what you wanna do with that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, and then when they start doing the whole, I can't believe in Jesus anymore, I have to believe
It's
the universal Christ, the universal Jesus. As they put this here under the Center for Action and Contemplation. And this is where they have literally the guy who kind of came up with the idea of the universal Christ, like his conference stuff. He says this: Christ is a cosmic life principle in which all beings participate. The incarnation is an ongoing revelation of Christ, uniting matter and spirit, operating as one and ever. Together, Jesus and Christ shows us the way, life of death and resurrection. If Jesus is the kite, Jesus is the person flying the kite and keeping it from escaping away into invisibility. If Jesus is the person holding the string, Christ is the great banner in the sky. All can draw life. They do not recognize flying. Jesus does not himself as much as he flies it aloft for all to see. So right there, if you're familiar with the Christian church, you see how it's different.
Yeah.
In this case, so in Christianity, we know Father, Spirit, Jesus, Trinity, 3 in 1, 1 and 3. Yep. Christ came to die, was resurrected. Okay. Now, that being, so we know that 3 separate entities, but one. But we didn't, and when you read in the Bible, you know that Christ is everywhere and all that sort of stuff. The Spirit is everywhere, I should say. But cosmic life principle
Sounds a little.
Again, you're going more for that more spiritualist, new age sort of thing. So, and this is kind of that whole deal with them wanting to be so inclusive because of love that they don't want to tell anyone that they can ever be excluded because of what is said in the New Testament. They want to exclude all the bad parts, the parts like, hey, guess what? We were born in sin. Don't sin no more. To Jesus is where it's a cosmic life being that teaches us and shows us his life as a banner in the sky.
So what, I mean, at this point, I mean, they just say that Jesus died for everyone.
Essentially, and is everything and every, yeah.
Because, I mean, it sucks when you have partial truth, throw your stuff in there. Because, well, of course, but they believe what they're saying is truth. But there is no truth. That's what boggles my mind.
Right.
That there is no absolute truth.
So the person who kind of has kind of been spearheading this. His name is Rohr, Father Rohr, Rohr.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. One of the persons who was critiquing his book said that Rohr wants to root all spiritual traditions in a perennial wisdom. He believes that his understanding of the universal Christ opens Christians up to the spirituality of other religions and should lead to social transformation. By perennial wisdom, Rohr does not mean biblical teaching, but a common spiritual awareness tapped into by various mythics, seers, and sages throughout history and within various religions. In other words, other religions, prophets and seers and all that, when they talk of their God, they're talking of the universal Christ. They're not talking of whatever.
That's
the essential idea is that God and the cosmos are one. Thus, he says, no one religion will ever encompass the depth of such faith in God's love. We will see that he vitiates the notion of God's love through his misunderstanding of Jesus' atoning. Again, this is a commentary on this guy's work. It says Rohr's worldview is not monotheism, but rather all is divine, or perhaps pantheism, all is in God's being. For example, he refers to Colossians 3:11 as saying there's only Christ. He is everything and he is in everything. But the actual biblical text says, here there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in. In other words, it's talking about unity instead of there being just this universal. So again, remember how we talked about before in the judging thing,
taking the whole
thing and
together.
In context, and how when taken out of context, you can make it talk however you would like.
When it's taken out of context, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had talks with people where pretty much the thought is where it's just like, the Bible is, it's interpreted differently by other people. So each interpretation is like, well, that thought, like one was even going on about how like that's how there came to be like the other religions. It was just other people's interpretations of the Bible, then came up with these other religions and others and stuff like that. So they're all good, they all do the same thing. It's just, I guess, under different stat. It was really bizarre. I don't know. I didn't like it, but I mean, I guess that could fit into the whole, relativism. If it's true to them, then it's true. Ours is, it just, man.
Yeah.
I feel like that would just drive a person nut to think that there's all these different things. And some people think that religion is just a thing to keep people in line, but why is it worth keeping people in line if I don't know. What does religion do for the most part?
Well, from a secular point of view, it's like, it appeases the mass and some, right? And to a sense, I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between religion and faith. Religion is
Yes.
those things that we practice, that we do in community and that, right?
Yes.
Faith is our personal connection to God and things that we believe based on the Bible and that. Mm-hmm. And the religion part is supposed to help enhance that. Now, when it becomes the point when religion is the only thing you're doing and you're not doing the actual faith, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right.
When you're like, I am so focused on my works. Again, going back to our previous conversation, your therapy session.
Yeah.
When it's a works-based reward system, you're just doing things to do things and to get the desired outcomes instead of this is what my faith says.
Right. And because I always also thought like religion was also around to keep some kind of law and order almost in a sense. Because then there's
probably in the olden days, yes.
More so.
Yeah, because back in the olden days, that was kind of how, I wouldn't say you controlled people, but how you helped people stay kind of in line,
right?
With all that.
Okay.
So something else I want to bring up about Rohr. He actually distinguishes between Jesus and Christ. He makes them as two different entities, essentially. Near the beginning of his book, he asks, how is Christ's function or role different from Jesus's? His answer is that Jesus is limited, particular, and earthbound, while Christ is unlimited, universal, and cosmic. He writes that Christ was clearly not just Jesus of Nazareth, but something much more immense. In other words, are two separate entities according to his teaching. And this Rohr guy, he was, he's been a Franciscan friar and a Catholic priest for 50 years prior to this in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Why is it always us Americans that have to ruin the world?
It's just what we're good at doing.
Yep. So he's influenced such people as Oprah Winfrey, Rob Bell, Michael Gungor. Yep.
Like Gungor?
Yeah. So, those are some of the people that supposedly he has influenced greatly from that sort of stuff. And so it's just like, yeah, that, those things happen when people start getting influence. And his book is one of the top selling books on Amazon on religion.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so it's one of those books that I will, as much as I probably don't want to, I will read all the way. And the reason is I want to understand his ideas, not to implement them in any sense of the word. I don't want to implement them at all, but I want to understand them so that way I'm a little more prepared for when his stuff comes up. Because you bring up stuff like this, you bring up people like Kevin Max, people who are influential in the Christian circle, and all of a sudden people are going to go, yeah, I'm going to do that too.
Oh yeah.
It's like they're looking for these people to do that, to look for permission, even though they might not necessarily, want to. And we'll see what happens. There's this whole thing of, hey, hopefully Kevin Max eventually, this sounds so Christianese, sees the light. Put that in quotes. Yeah.
He needs a little come to Jesus.
Yeah. But with the universal Christ, they do redefine a bunch of words. Like they redefine God. Every time you choose love, you are in touch with the divine person. Creation. God, from the Big Bang onward, was incarnate in all things. Crucifixion, something that happened to Jesus and should happen to us too. Everyone has to let go of attachments, crucifixion, so as to be reborn through resurrection. Resurrection, the general principle of all reality, and resurrection is another word for change. On Easter Sunday, one circumcised body of Jesus morphed into ubiquitous. This is how he's redefining theology. And this is the theology now that Kevin Max has gone on to, but also others in the exvangelicals navigates to, because it makes them feel more happy, makes them feel more
I don't know. I guess if I believe that, maybe that would make me feel more happy, but like listening to it, I just can't see it making me more happy.
The reason it's going to make some people happy is because
it just opens the door for so many more people.
Well, not only that it opens the door for so many more people, it also says, oh, when I was born, God. Oh, love means I'm communing with God. I'm in touch with the divine person. And so they deconstruct from a faith, regardless of it's a toxic church or not, to a very toxic faith. And it gets to be problematic really quickly.
I still...
What?
Like what I said earlier. I mean, when I know you already gave the reasons as to why, because there might be some hidden context, but when it comes to Christ saying he's the only way, the truth, and the life, and no one can get to the Father except through him, which then if you want to be in heaven once you die, you're gonna have to be where the Father is, because the Father's in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess, do they not, I don't know, do they ask themselves what if they're wrong? Like, wouldn't that freak you out if you were one of them?
In a way, probably not, because, again, they can never know the truth, so they can never know if they're right or wrong. To me, that'd be a little more freaky, because I'd be in a constant state of what if.
Yeah, and how can... I just don't understand how you could live in a world where there's, like, no actual right or wrong. And it's just a bunch of chaos. It's just going to end up being. Yeah. They're all going to be upset.
And the thing that I always find that's interesting every time someone goes, oh, I'm exvangelical or I'm deconstructing or whatever, this almost guaranteed this is going to happen. At the end of it, they'll be like, I am just loving more like Jesus, with the thought and the assumption being that they just love everyone. Good, great. I'm all for that. Loving everyone.
Oh.
Okay.
All you need is love.
So they, so they say that they're like, I'm loving like Jesus. I love everyone. Great, good. That's good.
Yeah.
Loving is good. But then they go, which means I will accept everyone, not judge anyone. Nothing is ever wrong. And so.
But that's impossible.
I get it. There's a difference. And I've said this before, there's a difference between loving someone and letting them know, hey, what you're doing is destructive or harmful.
Yeah.
And saying what you're doing is destructive or harmful does not immediately don't love someone.
Right, correct.
And that's the problem. Fully today, if you disagree with them in any, if you happen to say, hey, you do you, that phrase, you do you, boo, you do you, boo,
you do
but
you, boo.
You're doing something wrong, they'll go, why do you hate me?
Yeah.
Instead of going, thanks for being concerned about me.
Why are you so against? Why can't you just support the things I want to do.
I know. So that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And they think by doing this and saying, oh, I just have, all of a sudden that takes away any of the responsibility. That all of a sudden, because if they love, they're in touch with the universe, the divine, as if that's going to make their life better. Kevin is kind of weird on back and forth stuff.
Yeah.
Because he goes, I'm exvangelical, whatever. And he goes, read the text carefully. I'm like,
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
cool. But he's
He's a dreamer. That's what he is.
he's
Oh. This just makes me think of that song Imagine by the Beatles, and I hate it so much. Where I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about.
Yep.
Where we can all just live in peace amongst one another.
So I'm going to read in closing here. This is a verse from his upcoming song.
Oh.
And I think this will give you all you need to know about this.
Okay.
It's okay to be estranged from everything you were taught. And it's okay to unpack all the hopeless baggage that you bought. I know the sun, it never shines in the same place twice. And I know that life is better with a trusted vice. But you will never change when you cave to the universal Christ. That's all from his new album. He says, I'm truly progressing forward in deconstructing rock and roll with. Join us.
Stop it.
Did you say stop it to him?